Today I'm going to talk to you about sustainable food production, in particular some of the industry pressures that we're seeing from our customers and the trends and technology that we're seeing in the pack house in order to address some of the sustainability issues. Globally, I'm sure you're well aware that the global population is increasing exponentially. And by 2040, the UN predicts that the global population will be over 9 billion. In a recent report from the EU, they predict we're going to need a 50 to 70% increase in food supply in order to address the food consumption behavior habits that we have at the moment at 2050. However, this is quite a tall demand, especially given the fact that the relative amount of arable land is decreasing and also the relative amount of renewable fresh water is decreasing. In the past, we've used methods such as increasing fertilizer consumption to increase our productivity outputs. However, these sorts of methods are not necessarily sustainable for the future. As a result, in 2016, the UN developed 17 Sustainable Development Goals in order to provide the world with a future focus on where we should be focusing our efforts to create a sustainable ecosystem. Of these 17 Sustainable Development Goals, I believe there are 3 that are of particular interest to people who own a pack house. This is number 6, clean water and sanitation, number 8, decent work and economic growth, and number 12, responsible consumption and production. Clean water and sanitation is particularly around reducing our water pollution and improving our water use, efficiency, and protecting our water ecosystems. And already in New Zealand, you can see the government is having increased focus on this through increased regulation around water usage and also increased regulation around our trade waste standards. Number 8 is in particular around sustaining our GDP growth per capita, increasing our productivity via technology, and improving the efficiency of our resource usage. So in recent times, with the increase in minimum wage and COVID, you can see that our dependence on labor is not necessarily sustainable in order to achieve the high productivity outputs that we require for the future. Lastly, number 12, which is responsible consumption and production. This is mainly around having sustainable use of our natural resources and halving our food waste, and in particular, using methods such as recycling in order to minimize that waste stream. Again, you can see government regulation around natural resources and waste streams are ever increasing in this area. So to put this in the context of a potato pack house, number 6, clean water and sanitation, a potato pack house can use anywhere between 15 to 30 cubic meters per hour of fresh water. And a large number of these pack houses have no or minimal water recycling in place. This means water is simply entered into the pack house and used to wash your produce and then simply dumped straight away. There is no brown water recirculation system in place to provide any sort of recycling of that water. And in many cases, this water comes from natural sources and is eventually released back into the waterways, increasing sediment, nitrate, and phosphate levels in the water. Currently in New Zealand, I would actually say the regulation around our water usage is not too bad. But globally, what we're seeing is the regulation is increasing rapidly and becoming more and more stricter, and eventually this is going to make it to New Zealand. As a result, we're seeing a shift in technology to try and address some of these issues. We're seeing improved solids removal capability. So this is through high capacity filters, which can process over 120 cubic meters per hour and filter down to 150 microns, all in one pass. Secondly, we're seeing customers focus more on reducing the overall water consumption. So thinking more strategically about how to place the water in their line and how they can use that water more efficiently, such as through spray nozzles to more effectively spread the water across their produce. And lastly, we're seeing a step towards companies investing in zero water discharge systems. And this mainly comes about because there is some government regulation now overseas that requires the water discharge from a plant to be of the same quality as the water entering the plant. As a result, people are now developing systems which enable you to recirculate your water almost indefinitely and have water treatment systems that just simply extract the solids and reduce the nutrient levels within those systems. In regard to decent work and economic growth, this is mainly around productivity. So New Zealand's productivity is actually 20% lower than the OECD average. This means we need to work 20% harder to earn the same amount of GDP as most developed countries. In addition, reliable and available labour is actually becoming harder and harder to find, as I'm sure you're well aware. This is made worse by the fact that this labour is actually becoming quite expensive with our recent increases in minimum wage. And also, these employees on average have 8 to 9 significant injuries per month. This means they require at least a month off work. So this is not necessarily the safest environment for them to be working in. So overall, you can see our dependence on labour is not necessarily sustainable, especially given the high productivity requirements of this industry. So again, we're seeing a shift towards technology which reduces our dependence on this labour and increases the actual safety within the packhouse. So this is anything as simple as automated weighing to bagging, to automated palletizing, and then automated bin handling systems and storage solutions. Secondly, we're seeing customers focus more on making sure you capture your machine performance. So this is implementing more sensors on your machine, such as temperature, vibration, power, and water usage. And this enables you to optimize your machines such that you can get maximum throughput, but also enables them to implement preventative maintenance schemes to minimize any downtime of that machine. And lastly, we're seeing customers focus on capturing a holistic view of the whole packhouse, such that it can be monitored remotely and alarms be implemented to notify them of any abnormalities and enable them also to do long-term analytics on their line's performance. Ultimately, enabling them to optimize their line performance and increase its efficiency. Lastly, number 12, responsible consumption and production. This is mainly around food waste. So on average, from harvest to consumer, 35% of these potatoes actually deem waste prior to even reaching the consumer. Just through the stages in that supply chain, the waste streams are generated. Within a packhouse, this is particularly a result of poor grading, so overgrading. So people on an inspection table are taking off good produce, even though it's fine, just because they feel like that's the job they have to do. Secondly, this is around poor handling. So machines damaging the produce in the process of handling it within the packhouse or any sort of packing errors. And lastly, it's around poor shelf life. So storage and cool chain and hygiene management systems aren't implemented appropriately, and so the produce doesn't have its maximum shelf life before reaching the end consumer. So again, we're seeing a shift in technology here towards even further improved product handling than we have in the past. So we're seeing customers having extremely high attention to detail, making sure that there's no chance of produce being chipped or slightly damaged or dropping, and also no chance of the produce actually landing on the floor. Secondly, we're seeing customers focus more on increasing the actual shelf life through more hygienic machinery, implementing any sort of biocides where necessary, and also CRP systems. In addition, in hotter areas, we're also seeing customers implement cooling systems to ensure the produce has maximum shelf life before reaching the end consumer. And lastly, around optical grading, we're seeing this becoming more and more of an option for customers, not only to reduce the dependence on staff and improve the health and safety within the workplace, but this grading is becoming more and more reliable, and such that it gives you better yields than manual grading and prevents any sort of overgrading that you would have had in that previous sort of system. And these systems are now reaching a state where they have feasible throughput capacities and becoming more and more viable for most customers. So overall, there's an ever-increasing demand for food, and thus an increased demand for productivity from this industry. And however, some of our current practices are not necessarily using our resources in a sustainable manner, but there are now technology out there which are enabling packhouses to implement more and more sustainable practices. Many thanks for your time. If you have any questions or want to get in touch, feel free to contact me at kent.s@WYMA Solutions. Thanks.